Hello and welcome to Scale Car Garage and part 3 of taking a die-cast model to the slot car track. And not just putting it on the slot car track, but actually making it into a slot car. Should have been more specific, I suppose, but it is part 3. Well, we have some parts to deal with. And as I said many times throughout this series, there's always more parts than you realize. Especially when you start taking it apart. That's why they call them parts, because they're a part. Yeah, I think we should just get straight to work here at Scale Car Garage. Well, just to quickly recap, we started off with a die-cast model of a 1956 Ford F100 pickup truck. In part 1, we disassembled the pickup truck. Part 2, we stripped all of the paint off the parts. And now what we have is a collection of parts that are actually quite nicely organized, that we are going to try and make molds of so that we can make as many of these trucks as we wish and also make it into a slot car that'll go around the track. So, let me just, before we get really rocking and rolling on this, show the items that I use when I'm getting ready to make molds. And please, use this as a guide. You can watch, there are other folks who do some absolutely brilliant work. There's no wrong way to do this, really. I'm just going to show you the way that works best for me. And hopefully you'll find it might work best for you. So what we really need, well, we need some good old-fashioned wax paper, because we're going to put wax paper on our work surface. It really helps when working with the next absolute must item when making molds, which is clean clay. And clean clay, it comes in these blocks, and it looks like plasticine, but it really isn't, because the great thing about this clean clay is, first of all, it's non-toxic. So if you have little ones that want to take a hunk of clay and start sculpting, which, hey, you're never too young to do that, no fear. This stuff is not toxic at all, which is why it's so good when used with silicone, because there are no sulfites. It doesn't, it enables the silicone to cure properly. I think that's the best way to phrase it. Because, quite frankly, if you use traditional, I guess plasticine, for lack of a better description, it has sulfites in it, and the silicone around that touches the sulfite won't cure, so you have just a mess. Clean clay is wonderful stuff. You can get it at art supply stores. I get it at the sculpture supply store that I use, and because we're going to be doing a lot of molds, I got a lot. And these bricks come in handy because, of course, they're square edges, and you can do a lot with them. But don't despair. This stuff is so reusable, as you can see. And normally, I would use the clean clay I've used before, but I wanted to sort of illustrate if you were just having to go and purchase things and start afresh, what using, I guess, unused clean clay would be like. I'm probably going to end up using some of this too, but for our purpose, I thought I would show you clean clay in its natural state. Wow, it's eager to go, as you can see. All right, so we've got clean clay. We have mold boxes. Now you can make mold boxes out of anything, anything that's sturdy enough to hold the silicone. Foam core. I've used foam core in the past. It's really light, really quite sturdy, not that expensive. You can cut it, you use hot glue. It's really great. However, as I've gotten a little progressed in my age, lazy. Although I like to prefer thinking of it as being wise. And I have kept a whole bunch of plastic containers. Now, I'm sure you slot car folks will notice that a lot of these look very familiar. These are, most of them are jewel cases from slot cars. And boy, I'll tell you, they come in really handy, especially these Carrera ones, which are massive. And you think, oh my gosh, they're on the shelf, and what are we going to do with them? Mold boxes, fantastic mold boxes. And as I'll show you, you can put more than one thing you're casting in that mold box, and then pour a whole bunch of silicone, and then basically cut the molds apart, and it really saves on making tons and tons and tons and tons of mold boxes. So that's what we're going to do. Now I'm going to do this quickly. I did do a series showing this step by step. I'm going to put the wax paper out, and then I'm going to we're going to start making a mold of something. Decide what to make first. Well, we'll think about that while we prepare our workspace. How about that? All right, let's go. Now, I know I've said this many times before, folks. I'm going to sort of show you bits and bobs, but for what I do show you, please feel free to skip search. That's what this is for. Find whatever is most interesting to you. I'm trying to show as much as possible as usual, but absolutely skip search if you find this a bit tedious. Here we go. Okay, so we've got the work surface prepared. We have our clean clay. One thing I do with clean clay, because it's just it's a personal thing, I actually do wear gloves when I use clean clay. It just saves me having to really scrub my hands and worry, especially if you have pets or young children. Even though it's non-toxic, it does leave a little bit of a odd feeling on my hands anyway, so I do wear gloves. Also, the clean clay is so good that it will actually, if you do use your hand and leave a fingerprint, that'll probably end up in the mold. So that's why I use gloves for a number of reasons. Plus, it's a good habit. Why not? All right, so let's choose a part to mold, and we have so many. I think we'll start with the metal parts first. All right, something big. Yes, I'll put the rest over there. The cab. Now, you look at this as a. First of all, they did a wonderful job on this. It's just a beautiful piece. Oh. Actually, you know what? Let's start small. I've changed my mind. One thing I really want to cast is this hood. And this would be a great example of mold making for us, I think. And what I do, and again, it's entirely up to you. Other people will actually cast the underside first so that it would fit in the mold easier or perhaps more securely, for the second pour being the actual surface pour. Personally, I like doing the exposed surface or the surface you want to look best as the first pour. Personal preference, and from experience, it seems to work rather well, and it still will fit back into the mold as you will see. And I'm getting ahead of myself, and I apologize. So we're going to actually mold the hood, and it's got some lovely detail to it. That rib up the middle is just lovely. And we're going to mold in the hinge, because the first set of molds we're going to make, we're going to do the parts as they came off the die cast. And then we have a choice of either making another decorative model for our track, or casting everything, putting it together, making another mold that's just for slot cars. So let's get started with this, and I will show you in detail how I would do the hood, and then the rest, well, I'll get it done and show you when it is done. So let's get the hood done first. I think that would be oh, look at that. Look at this. Isn't that lovely, huh? Look at that. Again, this is the advantage of using nice, fresh, new, clean clay, because you'll have a nice solid base. You'll have enough room to push stuff in, and I think it'll make a lovely, lovely mold. So let's take this out of the wrapper. There we go. Oh, lovely stuff. Right, dispose of that. We're going to try and put these blocks together. They actually come in separated blocks, as you can see. And if you're using the block this way, as I think we should use it. Oh, that's beautiful. That's perfect. You might want to join the two blocks and remove that line just with your finger. And you can see how I've done. That's all you need to do. Not much more than that. Just to show you. There you go, like so. There. Now, again, I would use my recycled clean clay for this, but let's suppose you've just bought this, and crinkly, and you have this wonderful sound. Okay, so what are we going to do? We're going to take a knife, and yeah, that's a knife. That's a knife. This is a knife, but that's a knife. So let's ensure that we have a really nice surround. Okay, I think that'll work. You know what? Let's finish this edge off a little bit, like so. You can see that. Just going to finish it off so it's nice and straight. Oops. There we go. Okay. We'll do maybe a better job than that. I think that's a really good place to put it. And what we're going to do is we're going to press the piece in. This is the advantage of using a metal die-cast model for molding, because you can put a little bit of pressure on it, and it'll be just fine. And that's going to be our parting line right there. Just going to be lovely. Just going to be lovely. Now you will notice that, hopefully you can see that there's a bit of a lip there. We'll clean this up in a minute. But what we have to do is fill in this void here where the hinge is, and we're actually going to mold this with the hinge. So we have to be very careful, but I think it'll turn out rather well. Well, use some of the clean clay that we've removed here. Ball it up. Again, this is the advantage of the wax paper. It's nice and clean. Clean clay doesn't stick to it, and you can just make these lovely rolls that you might need. There we go. You know, you don't think that playing with plasticine in kindergarten was going to actually be useful. It's amazing how things come full circle, isn't it? Here we go. I digress. All right. Here we go. Now what we're going to do, now we have a little, see, a nice little ball. We're going to now make a snake. Kindergarten, folks. it was very, very useful. There we go. Look at that. Isn't that nice? And, well, you know, this just might work. All right, so we want to and you can see I'm putting it a little over the edge here so we can do this. Now, if we left it like this, that would be your mold. So we want to clean it up. We want to make it smooth, and the more time you take to make the mold, I like to use the word happy. It becomes a happy mold. The more time you take to ensure that your lines are clean and clear, the happier your mold will be, the better the pulls, and it just makes a world of difference. So again, I digress. Now hopefully you can see that what I've done is isolated the pins for the hinge and the hinge supports. And that will be part of the first pour of the mold, and will enable us to have a hinge in the hood, already cast in perfect alignment. You don't have to make a separate piece. It would be all ready to go. Now I'm going to take this knife and just very carefully slice this so that it is equal. There we go. Work that in. Hopefully you can see that. Just smooth it out. The smoother the clean clay, the more the parts of the two molds will fit into each other with absolute ease. And when you're casting, it does make a difference. So there you have it. All of the edges have been smoothed out, and more importantly, sealed. So what we have to do now is decide how large we want this first mold bit to be. And let's see. I think, hopefully you can see that. I'm going to choose it to be as symmetrical as possible. So this part, take your time, please, because we're going to be cutting the clean clay, and we don't want to pull it away from the part that we've already sealed and is so ready to go. So we're just going to take our time. It's like cutting really soft cheese, and you don't want to rush it. So I'm just going to very slowly rock the knife back and forth. All right. There we go. And don't move the clean clay that has your part. Move the clean clay that doesn't have a part, and that way you'll ensure that it should make a lovely part, and I think it did. Look at that. Now, the other really important part is to do something called a key, and there are two ways to do a key. You can either sort of change the geometry of your block, which quite frankly I don't want to do, or very simply lightly put in, press into the clean clay some sort of shape. And what I'm going to use is, see if I have a nice shape. Oh, this is a good shape. Is the end of a very large drill bit, And I'm just going to put very little pressure. You don't want to distort it. There we go. I'm going to use a different shape on the other side here so that it will fit. And I'm just going to do it very lightly. Just want a little light. There we go. So it fits. And there we go. Smooth it. There we go. So we are ready to go. Wow. How nice is that? So there is a mold that's ready for a first pour. Now I'm going to do the rest of the parts, and when they're done, we'll come back. So let's fast forward a little bit, and here are all of the parts on their, well, I call them plugs for lack of a better description. But the plugs, of course, are made of clean clay. And of course, this is clean clay in its natural state, square, and really helps make a nice base for the first pour. And of course, there's our recycled clean clay, which you have to roll into a ball and then squish and square off. But it just takes a little bit more of an effort to use it. But boy, oh boy, oh boy. I know I've said this before, but you don't realize how many parts compose a die-cast model until you take it apart. And then you're reacquainted with the quantity once you start making molds. And the rule of thumb for making a mold is that, or making molds, I should say, excuse me, it's actually more challenging to make molds of small parts than it is to make molds for, well, large parts. Like, we have to remold this chassis because we need these running boards, and we're going to make very good use of that piece once we get rolling. But things like the windshield wipers, which are really quite tiny, and let's not forget the clear parts. They have the windshield, and you can see how tiny the headlights are. The headlights are not very big at all, but got to make a mold for them. So I didn't want to sort of take you through every part because there are a lot of parts, and I do have a more detailed step-by-step method of making molds and casting of a 356 Speedster that I did. However, I did want to show how, or at least emphasize here, the more time you take in making that first mold, the better your mold will turn out. And it's all about choosing the parting line. And I call the clean clay a plug, but that's actually going to be the second pour. So there will be a first pour and then a second pour, and excuse me, a bit of an itchy eye. First pour and a second pour, but that'll be in the next episode, and we're going to sort of, do sort of a Julia Child's cooking show format for that. I'm going to sort of fly you through that part as well, because I've already sort of, if you want to see it in detail, there's a much better step-by-step series of episodes that I've done. So I'll refer you to those, and it'll be in the description. However, very long-winded today. Just wanted to show you all the parts laid out, all ready for mold boxes, and I've got, as I said, jewel cases work really well. This is a Carrera jewel case. Absolutely awesome for big parts. And you can make your own from foam core if you wish, but I just want to show you how if you take your time, especially with making a proper plug or choosing a good parting line. You'll get a good first pour, which will make an even better second pour, and your parts will come out really, really well. Okay, I'm blithering on. Just want to say thank you so much for all of the support you've shown. Really appreciate it. And well, I better go and get mixing some silicone here at Scale Car Garage. I hope you enjoyed watching. If you did, please leave a comment, like, and subscribe.